Very quiet. Okay, guys, so this is me. You will also see me during the exams as well, for those that are going to write the exams. Obviously, for those that's going to have above 70%, which I expect a lot of you will probably then only see me maybe sometime again in the third year. I am not involved in Computer Science 1B. I'm actually in Computer Science 3B involved, but Prof. Coulter, Mr. Satungu, they are your lecturers for Computer Science 1B. But let's not go there yet. We still have to finish the semester first. Finally saw you. Okay, I'm a very nice guy. Well, that depends. Anyway, guys, let's go on. So what are we going to do this evening? And what are we going to do this week? So last week we finished our series where we covered the revision. And this week we decided that we're going to spend some time on just giving you a little bit more in detail around how you can get bonus marks. We already covered some of that on Wednesday, but two aspects which will allow you to get bonus points are, the first one is called enumerations. And I know on Wednesday I think it's like the last 5 minutes of the lecture, we quickly covered that. So I thought it would be good if we can do that in a little bit more detail today. And then tomorrow we're going to start covering record structures. Now, please note, if this is totally Greek to you, record structures or enumerations, for now, it's okay. Next semester, you guys are going to build upon this knowledge, however, and you're going to start going into object-oriented programming. But the principle of using record structures and enumeration will earn you quite a lot of extra bonus points. I think last year we said that if you used an enumeration somewhere, you got 2 bonus points, and if you use this record structure, you also got 2 bonus points. So if you use both, I mean, it's 4 bonus points immediately, which you would not have had. So I think it's a great tip if you do want to do something, and it doesn't have to be really involved record structures or involved enumerations. I mean, you can just have a very basic one and you will still get your bonus mark. So take notes. Will notes be allowed in the exam as well? I think we'll communicate about that a little bit later, but I believe it will be the same rules as what we had in the semester test too. So that means handwritten notes will be allowed. That also means that we will allow you to get access to the lecture notes on Eve. Okay, let's move on. So how do we use enumerations? Now, to help us explain this principle of enumerations, I'm just going to go to one of our previous pracs. In fact, I'm going to take prac 8's memo. I'm just going to show you a few interesting aspects in that memo. So I'm going to just share my screen. Just wait for it. Right, so this is the memorandum for Practical 8. And in Practical 8, we had a game world, I don't know if you can remember, but it's effectively a 2-dimensional array where we had a player that walked around on 2 different floors, had to pick up fuses and had to take that to the fuse box and so forth and so forth. So what is interesting to note, and I just want you guys to notice these things. So here we've got, for instance, a set of features. And these features ranged from empty to the player, to a wall, to a fuse, to stairs, a cabinet, fuse box. And what we've done is we've actually used this a lot inside my implementation. So let me just show you. Oh man! So let me just show you, for instance, where some of this have been used. For instance, here we've used val cabinet. Can you see how we referenced val? We didn't actually worry about the actual value itself. So we didn't say, well, val cabinet has got a value of 3. We just referenced the name val cabinet. Whatever number that is immaterial to us from an aspect, but all we know is it has some kind of number. The same thing happened with stairs. The same thing happened with the player, actually. Where else did we use it? Well, there's empty as an example. So basically, these are a lot of the features that we used. And just for interest's sake, we actually started numbering them from 0 to 6. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. And the reason why we numbered them is because we had a 2-dimensional array of a number of integers. Okay, so which basically stored these values. Another thing which we typically have is these return values in our solutions. And again, notice these return values, normally the way that I programmed them up to this point was to give them certain values. I normally said that a success is a 0, and then argument count error is a -1, a conversion error is a -2, and a range. But I can easily change this to 1 and 2 and 3, and that would be perfectly acceptable. I mean, there is no hard and fast rule that says that error values has to be negative. Okay, but it is something that you can implement if you really want to. In fact, most systems today, from a command line perspective, do return some kind of value, and normally that value indicates whether a successful exit or not. And normally then also the number means something special, but it is absolutely dependent on the developer what that number means. Now, what is an enumeration? Well, an enumeration is effectively what we've done here. Can you see we've given numbers, because if you spell out the word enumeration, it means that we're giving numbers, numeration, to certain things. Now, an enumeration creates a new type. That's the first thing that you have to just, I think, understand. So let's go through the process of creating an enumeration, and you'll see I'm going to change this into an enumeration. So before we forget, ladies and gentlemen, this is the late viewing code. For those that's watching this video a little bit later, the late viewing code for today, the 24th of May, is exclamation mark, lowercase d for donkey, Victor, uppercase, 55 uppercase kilo. Okay, so it's exclamation mark, lowercase delta, uppercase Victor, 55 uppercase kilo. Now that that's out of the way, let's go create our enumeration. So our enumeration, and you'll see it is so simple to use. You effectively start with the keyword enum to explain to the compiler that what we're going to create now is an enumerator type. And now you just have to give the type a name. And for this, I'm going to just call it features. I don't think I've used it anywhere else. And an enumeration is actually a list of items. So an enumeration starts with a semicolon. And I'm going to, I just want to see what is a nice way to actually do this. I'm going to do it like that. And because it's a list, the items in the enumeration are separated by commas. So that's one thing which is important. An enumeration can only have one of the following numbers, and that's kind of what it means. It's either a value of 0. Now what happens with an enumeration is the first item in the enumerator will always have a value of 0. So if I say val underscore empty, that item will have a value automatically assigned to 0. So it's effectively doing that line of code by just doing that. And val player has a value of 1. So can you see we started with 0, 1, and then val wall, and then val fuse, and then it was stairs, and then it was cabinet, and then it was fuse box. Okay, and because this is the last item, there's no comma after that. Now effectively I can comment out this block. So boom, 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 double comment, boink, there's all of that commented out, and there I've basically replaced these lists of constants. This is also constant. I mean, there's no way that you can change val empty's number to something else. So that's why it is still a constant value, and it has a value of 0. Can you see there? It actually, code blocks helps us to actually describe that that is a 0. Let's see if we'll do that again. Val player has a value of 1. val wall has a value of 2, and so forth. And if everything went well, it should just work. Because the way that you use it in your code is exactly the same. There's no special way to actually use it. So can you see, for instance, here where we used the sorry, here, for instance, where we accessed or gave the value empty to the ground location and the basement location, we just specified val empty. That's it. That is all you need to do. There's nothing special behind that. What else? Okay, so that's one of the things that you should be aware of. Another place, obviously, where we could have used it was in the return values. So let's just first see if there's any questions. Looks like there's a few. Okay, Friday. Okay, Friday in the I notice you are okay. Access to the exam is based on PCM or both semester mark, and access to the exam is based on both the practical component mark and the semester mark. Okay, so your semester mark has to be above. I think the learning guide said 40, I think, and the practical component mark I think said 50 or something like that. We will let you know if those values obviously changes and those limits changes. Next, check the learning guide on Eve under lecture notes. Yep, cool, thanks. Will notes be, okay, we've answered that. When are the VPL pracs due again? Did discuss this. Will the recording of 1A be available during the recess? Okay, yes, it will be available. Okay, guys, for those that don't know, recess is, I think it's 3 days or something weird like that. Normally it was a week. So it's effectively this Friday is the last lecture day for the semester, and then we have what they normally call a study term. The study term normally is a few days before the official start of the undergraduate exams. I think it's like 3 or something days, because some of the exams do start next week already. And then after that is the recess or the holiday. And normally we keep the Eve modules available for the whole year, in fact. So Computer Science 1A is, in fact, here until end of November, effectively, like after writing the exam. By the way, what do we do when we do not understand why VPL is not marking us? Okay, remember the marking only will happen after the end of, so the actual grading of the system, but your potential mark, that is in the VPL itself. You can obviously ask an assistant during their lab time, or you can try and communicate with us over Discord if you're not 100% sure. Please be important. It's important that you explain what you've done and on what you've tried. If we create the enumeration, there is no need for constants. Well, that's it. Yes. Well, you sometimes will have constants, because not all constants make sense to have an enumeration, because an enumeration is a list of things. Where you have certain constants where there's only 1 or 2, creating a numerator of that doesn't make sense. For instance, constants where you have specific values, for instance, like this min value, it doesn't make, you can't put that into an enumeration, because we actually want the value 5 and it has specific meaning. Potentially these ones, this could have been put into enumeration. It would have been a little bit more challenging. Well, it would have worked in this case as well, because it has actually but the values would have been different. It would have been 0, 1, and 2 instead of 1, 2, and 3. So yeah, not all values are good for enumerations. And here, definitely, you can't put the actual character data type into an enumerator, because the ASCII value for the dot character is not the same as, well, you can't really have that in the enumerator. Next is, let's see what other questions there were. We don't have to worry about assigning initial values. You don't have to. Yes, so Mr. Ulad, you don't have to worry about assigning initial values. Would you be able to use it with negative values? Yes, you can. Let me explain how this can be done. It kind of defeats the object of making it quick and fast, but let me demonstrate it according to these ones. And if you wanted to, for instance, make these negative values. So let's just again recap. How did we create our enumerator? You start with the keyword enum, and then let's say error, let's say values or exit or return values rather. Something like that. And then success is simple. That one will have a 1. And then obviously we had error argc, and then error conversion, then error, I think, range. There we go. Now the question is, let's just read this out. Comment. Okay. Can you make, for instance, that is 0 and this a -1 and that a -2 and that? Yes, you can. So if you do this, it actually gives that a special value. Let's save. Let's build. And this is still a const. There is no way that anywhere in your code you can actually change this value. You can actually see Code Blocks helps us as well with the auto return, where there shows error argc has a value of -1. So this is how you can potentially override the numbers. Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention with this. There's a few other things that you can also do with enumerations, but I don't want to go into too much complexity around it. This is the basics that will definitely get you through and get you some good extra bonus points for the in the semester test. Values stored inside enums are always integer data type. You are correct, Mr. or Mrs. Cortias. So because all the features are in the enum feature, does this allow us to access all the features at the same time should we need to? I'm not sure what you mean by accessing all the features at the same time. It's just a value. Okay, so Mr. or Mrs. Matenche, your question is, so because all the features are in enum features, does this allow us to access all features at the same time should we need to? Okay, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but you still access them or use them, because remember, this is for using purposes. You either use these variables or const variables to assign that to certain variables or variable types and so forth. Do we need to write it as const before you? No, you don't have to. Absolutely, Mr. Zavumuya. The question is, do you need to first write it as consts before you can use enumerators? Definitely not. I just wanted to show you how I can potentially change my existing application by just replacing it with an enumerator. So this type of code doesn't have to be in here at all. The same with this. Doesn't have to be in here at all. Okay? Don't have to first write it as a const. So features should be included, or it can be any term. Well, this is the name you to give it. So you have to give it a name. This enumeration has a specific type. That's actually what you're doing here. So you're saying, I have a new type called features. And features can either be one of the following. It can be value empty, it can be value player, it can be value wall. And that's actually what you do. What is interesting is you can pass this enumerator as a parameter. So for instance, we can, where did we use int exit? I think it's here. So normally we said the int exit was an integer. Now int exit we actually used, did we change it? No, we didn't yet. Okay, but potentially I can change this now to a enumerator, and I can just say, no, you're not an integer anymore, you're now an exit value. Okay, I'm not sure if it'll work well, but let's try it. We call features, we call that one return values, it's exit values. And again, I like to use uppercase for the enumerator name. because this just basically means that it's constant. You cannot change it. I know another way to do this is if you say en, like this, enum exit values. This is another way that you can name it, the type, whichever way you want to use it. Make that a 1. And I think from this point on, it automatically starts numbering them from that point onwards. We'll see now. Let's get rid of that. Save. Bold. No errors so far. It might give me a little bit of a warning and just, no, not yet. Now that's got a value of 1. Let's see, exit 1. That has, okay, so this is also something which you know. If you set the first item's value, then all the items after that will automatically increment from that initial value. For instance, can you see I've set exit fell to 1. Exit win automatically gets a value of 2. If you guys can see that autocomplete from code blocks. And exit quit automatically gets a value of 3 because it's, again, puts a number against each of these values, and we have specified the first number. That's why I couldn't do it for the negative numbers, because -1 is not after 0. It's actually before that. -2 is not after success, and -3 is not after error range. Okay, so that's why I had to, for each of these, actually give them values. But these ones will actually have an actual values, and now I can use this type instead of an integer. So there we go. We can have that as an enumerate exit vals. Just go to the implementation. Oh man, why does it not find it? Player. Hello. Why does it not want to show? There we go. Enumerate exit values. That's the enumerated type. And I think when I called it, so make sure that I used int exit, which is not strictly not true because int exit is an integer here. We actually have to now also make that a type, an enumerated type in exit vals, and we actually we can't give it a 0. We have to give it some kind of this wasn't great. In fact, what I should have done was probably made my enumerator. In this case, my logic won't work very well because I actually depend on a, let's call it a default of 0 to be there. So I need something which is 0, otherwise my logic won't work. So this, I can still do this way. See, that'll work. Something happened here. Oh. There we go. Let's try again. There we go. So what I've done is I've changed the type, and I've actually referred to the actual type, en exit vals. Can you see this is where I used it as the parameter type, en exit vals. Obviously that doesn't make sense. That must have been, shouldn't have been int, must have been something like en exit or something like that. Enumerator exit. And then here, well, I'm not going to change much, otherwise my code is not going to compile again. All right, but I just wanted to demonstrate that. Let's see any other questions. So an enumeration is chiefly for code readability and simplicity. Well, yes, but it also helps you to ensure that there's not a mistake that you're going to make for integers. This gets extremely useful to limit the number of options that you have. Consider an application, any kind of application which uses a drop-down button or drop-down option, and the drop-down options are always limited to, let's say, 5 items. It is very simple to create an enumerator for those 5 items and then link it to the option that the user selected, because it will always only have those 5 options. And then you can use the same principle in databases, because then it will only have those 5 items. It can't be anything else. It helps it to contain the types of potential values that you can have in that value type. Mr. or Mrs. Sibanda, so if we wanted to pass an enum, we would say features val empty. Yeah, basically just features. Yeah, exactly like that. You're 100% correct. Okay, so yeah, I think I've answered the question. Sibanda, front slash, I'm not sure what that means. Mabasa, so sir, what is going to happen if I did not write VPLs? Well, then we only take your practical mark, Mr. Mabasa. But why aren't you writing VPLs? That's the question. You will get potentially more marks if you write VPLs. So do it. If I say enum errors -1 times success, will this count as a negative value? No, you can't do that. You can't have a calculation inside an enumerator. Okay, so you can't have an expression that expresses some kind of calculation inside an enumerator. You have to physically give it a value. For instance, like success equals -1 or whatever. So you can't have a calculator, because remember, it's constant, cannot change. Or yes, Mr. Oliver or Mrs. Oliver, the question asked is, are enums constants? They are definitely constants. The enumeration starts counting from 0 always, yes, except in the cases where you override it, as I've demonstrated. Enums work great with integers. Yes, they can only store integers, nothing else. If you specify only some values, then would the others still follow from 0? That depends on what your start value is. If your start value has a number, the next number will be immediately after that. So if you make error equals -2, then does that mean it will count the next value being -1? Then yes, I believe so, Mr. or Mrs. Sibanda. You're 100% correct. So if I, for instance, had to change the order in my enumerator and make error argc -2 be the first item in my enumerator, then potentially the next items I didn't have to give values, because -2, then it would be -1, then 1. But yeah, that is correct. Is it a must to put the open braces symbol next to the features, or whatever name I give it? Yes, you have to, because it is a list. That is important to understand, because it contains a list of values. And a list of values in C++, you always put inside curly braces like this. And that's why there's commas in between them. It's a list. Next, do we have lectures tomorrow? Yes. And we have lectures on Wednesday as well. So Africa Day is not a public holiday. So if you wrote features and forgot to equate it to values like 1, 2, 3, -1, etc., how would you mark that? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. If you wrote features and forgot to equate it to values, you must have equated it to something. If you don't equate it to an enumerator, so if you use the enumerator, the first feature will always be a 0, and the second one will always be a 1, etc., etc. We will mark features or whatever. It doesn't have to have a specific value. So, Mr. Nju, the value is whatever makes sense in the solution, for the solution. So since you created a data type enumerator and exit vals, does that mean you can just go to the next types of content and declare them as exit vals? Will that just start incrementally assign values without typing enums? No, you have to create them as an enumerator. You can't create a const from an enumerator, if that's what you're asking, Mr. Sibanda. Mr. and Mrs. Ishmael, it seems like enumerations are more efficient as well. I would think so. It's a little bit easier to write. Okay, Ramalepe, -2, yes, I believe that would have, -2, -1, 0, I believe that would have actually worked. I believe so. We can actually go and test that in just a minute. In fact, let me just take let's plagiarize your question. What am I missing? Error range. Let's do it this way. Let's get rid of that. Save all, bold. If there's something not lacquer, there's a warning. Default not handled. Okay, I'll have to worry about that now. That's -2, so you were correct. That is a -1, and that is a 0. Same principle. So whatever value you give the first item, the next item is the one just above that, and above that. What if I assign a negative value to the first value, like I've done just now, Mr. Rachakombo? What happens to the following values? Okay, I think I've just answered that. What will be covered in the tutorials? The tutorials this week will again be covering past papers, but we will make use of enumerators and structures, record structures, just to show you how we use them inside a typical practical or something like that. So, sir, by simply substituting enum like you did, will the code operate as it did? Absolutely. Well, it did. It did operate as it did. I didn't make anything else different. So enumeration helps with unnecessary declaration of numbers that are sequential. Exactly. So any set of numbers or components that makes use of the sequential numbering, you can just wrap it into an enumerator, and it automatically will give that sequential numbers to those members or to those items in the list. For practical 9, can I submit any past paper that I have completed? No, that's for informatics. If you want, so for practical 9, you've got two options. If you're an informatics student, you can submit any past informatics paper. If you're a computer science student and don't have informatics, please complete the practical 9 that we've done, and you will get a participation mark. So we're not going to mark it. So we're not going to show you how well you did for that prac. Do I state which paper? No, you don't have to. Mr. Mshlanga, you don't have to state which paper. So we can use enums on external files, like make it a function that we can pass the files txt. I'm not sure what you mean, enums on external files, like make it a function that we can pass the files to, maybe. I'm not exactly sure what your question is, but effectively, it's a type, and you use it anywhere in your code to reference a specific value. That's all. For instance, errorconv will give me an answer of -2. Errorocc will give me an answer of -2, and it belongs in this namespace dark space. Okay, nothing weird or strange. Okay. Oh, I know what this thing is. We're not handling that specific value. That's why it warns me about that. Let's make that default. That should fix that warning. No, still not. Oh, it's in here. It just says, hold on, because we're using an enumerator here, we're not handling the default case. So default, that's what the warning is. It should never reach this line. It should never print this out, but at least it gets rid of the warning. Okay. Let's see. Will it get rid of the warning? Yeah, it did. Okay. Okay, guys, that's it. I'm not going to spend too much time. So remember this enumerator. So there's another question. When can we expect semester test 2 marked? My goodness. By the end of the week. Okay, so we are definitely marking. In fact, I have been marking designs the whole day. But I'm not even halfway through yet. And then the coding marks, we still have to start marking the code as well. So that's still going to take a while, but we're doing it as fast as we can. We're going to try and get all the marks, the semester marks, PCMs, etc., out by the end of the week. Is it possible to force Inam to count in multiples like 2? No, it's not. How many marks does the design count for? Did you not look at the question? Well, it's 10 marks. It's 10 out of the 100. As P7, P8, P9, well, P9 not, but look at your mark sheet, guys. If you're not sure how much marks a specific component counts, we actually did cover that last week as well. Anything else? So tomorrow we're going to talk about record structures. It gets a little bit more complicated, and I'm going to try and explain to you why it's great to use it. I think it actually makes things a lot more simpler, and it helps to prepare you a little bit for semester test 2. Can you change the incrementation of enumerations? No, you cannot. Jay Oliver asks, so Prac 9 does not count for marks. It does count for marks. Would be for practice only? No, it actually counts for marks. So it's an easy 100 marks. Just participation. Just do something. It doesn't even have to work. Come on, guys. It's very, very simple. All right, so that is it. You get a participation mark. Does the participation mark count towards anything? Yes, it does. Count towards your normal pracs. We're giving you effectively a free 100 marks. Fire. You are funny, haha. For those that were writing in D1 Lab, you would know. Okay, guys. Thank you, guys. We'll see each other then tomorrow, and we'll talk and see how we're going to make things work for record structures. There's a bit of theory, but tomorrow's tutorial we'll also already start using the record structures. So was that a fire alarm? It was the fire alarm, and I did phone protection services to have a look. They actually came out. The worst is they said they don't know how to switch it off. They didn't know how to. It was a false alarm, and they didn't know how to switch it off. So they had to get the contractors out to come and switch it off eventually, which was horrible. Yeah. Of context, as marking has started, what is the latest average mark? Don't know, to be honest, because I have only been focusing on designs. So that means I have no idea what the full marks at this stage is. That's only 10% of the full mark. I know, I also walked out of the venue with a headache. It was horrible. Okay, guys, that's it. I have to go. I have to run to my next venue, up to my next link. Let me stop recording.